Take a look at the major indices. Fractional gains across the board. So both the Dow and the S&P 500 opening at record highs, and the Nasdaq seeing strong gains as well this morning, actually outperforming, up about 0.5% after it was the clear leader last year in the markets, up just about 40% for its best year since the financial crisis. All right, for more on how markets are moving this morning, we're joined by Seth Denson, co-founder and chief strategist at GDP Advisors. Seth, it's good to have you with us this morning. What is your prediction for January and for 2021? Are you optimistic?
Well, I am optimistic, and I certainly think that the markets are optimistic. They're showing it right now. And I think that we've seen this as a continuum throughout 2020 where the markets looked for things to be positive about. I continue to be positive and hope that as we go through the rest of this month, whether we see some political turbulence or not, at the end of the day, the markets will end up positive going forward.
Okay, so let's focus on two key events this week, starting with the Georgia runoff election is going to decide the balance of power in Congress and whether or not some of Joe Biden's policies like higher taxes actually get pushed through. Do you foresee this as a potential volatile factor in this market?
I don't think there's any question that this could be potentially volatile. If Republicans don't hold at least one seat, I think the markets will react in a negative way, at least short term, with concerns over what might happen from a policy perspective in a Biden administration. Will we see things, as you've already mentioned, like higher taxes, greater regulatory structure, oversight of the oil and gas industry at a different level, packing the courts? All these things might impact that. The markets tend to like divided government. Things move slower and that pendulum doesn't swing quite so wide so that the markets can properly react.
Now, what about on Wednesday? A group of Republican senators led by Ted Cruz from Texas is expected not to move forward on these election results for the presidential election, and instead claiming a 10-day audit into allegations of voter fraud. Is that something that could also move the markets?
No, I think the markets are pretty clear about what's going to happen on January the 20th. Now, what does need to happen from all of this, though, I think we do need to make sure that the American public is confident in our electoral system, that there wasn't any fraud. And so shine a light on it. Let's run some investigations. Let's allow those to continue. But at the end of the day, it looks like Joe Biden is going to be elected and sworn in on January the 20th. The markets know that. They're confident in that. And I think they'll continue to react regardless of what happens on Wednesday.
So when we look forward through the rest of 2021, Seth, I think the general consensus is there could be a few speed bumps along the way. Obviously, the vaccination effort not rolling out as quickly as planned. But we do know that this unprecedented monetary stimulus paired with the forthcoming fiscal stimulus could certainly be a boon. Should investors brace for pullbacks? I mean, last week we had many market guests coming on saying that January could be a volatile month.
Yeah, I don't know that January is going to be all that volatile because of so much optimism in the market. We continue to see vaccines rolled out. Yes, they are slow. We need to see that improve. But new vaccines are hitting the market. AstraZeneca in Great Britain this week. And that'll start to help the global situation. So I think that through January, we'll continue to see optimism. And I think optimism is currently baked into the market going forward. What isn't baked in is pessimism. It's the thing that could go wrong. And I worry about the volatility if we do start to see things go not slightly wrong, but greatly wrong, because that's certainly not baked in, and the markets could react pretty volatile way.
The Nasdaq leading today on the first day of 2021. I mean, a banner year last year in 2020 as these stay-at-home stocks really did benefit as we were all stuck at home. Do you anticipate that the Nasdaq is going to be another clear winner and outperformer this year?
Oh, up 43%. I don't think anybody could have predicted that, right? And all the markets are up. And in a year like 2020, that is impressive. You know, I don't know that Nasdaq will outpace everything in the way that it did in 2020. Certainly, it should be in line going forward. The stay-at-home stocks, like you mentioned, I think that those will start to kind of level out as the market starts to reopen. But those other stocks that are in the market that took a great hit in 2020, those things that were impacted early on, I think those will start to see a rise at least in the second quarter, maybe even by the end of the first quarter.
Now, when it comes to the rest of the year, obviously there are big questions as to when the American public is going to be vaccinated. Seth, if we don't see those efforts really taking shape by mid-year, is that something that can derail this rally?
Oh, I don't think there's any question that it could. Again, we've gotten off to a slow start on getting this vaccine rolled out, and it points to the fact that it looks like there was all this attention on getting the vaccine and maybe not quite so much attention on how we actually get the vaccine into our citizenry. And I think that as we get through the second quarter, if we're not on a good pace where a good chunk of our population is getting vaccinated or at least having access to it, the markets are going to start to react because in general the economy will react. And I think that could be a negative if we don't get this in gear and get it rolled out.
Seth, how do you look at the company Tesla? Obviously a momentum stock that just crushed it last year on more than 700%, but now something that many Americans own because it is part of the S&P 500. What do you think of it?
Well, I liked Tesla early on, although I maybe wasn't as bullish as others were because of the lack of profit margin that they were posting in the early days. But listen, they have a great innovator in Elon Musk at the helm. I do get concerned when you have someone with such we'll call it control or image tied to a brand. I live a little bit by the hit by the bus theory, but what Tesla has done is they've really created a solid product, and they're hitting their marks. Yeah, they missed the rollout of the number of cars they wanted, but they barely missed it in a year like 2020. I think that's okay. I think with it getting added to the S&P 500, that's going to continue to boost it. I think the future is bright for Tesla.
What about Bitcoin? Bitcoin, speaking of momentum, I mean, seen a huge surge into the end of last year and even in the early days of this year. Is that something, Seth, that you stay away from or you think might see some potential?
Kristen, you and I have talked about this before. I've never been a big fan of Bitcoin. I always wonder about its stability long term. That being said, the more entrepreneurs and market heavyweights that get into Bitcoin, the more I'm going to start to ease my attention on it. And while I may not be as bullish on Bitcoin, there's certainly those that are. And the more that those that are people like Elon Musk and Mark Cuban and some of these others, the more it's going to start to get my attention is there's going to be some stability in it going forward. And that's what we need to see if we want Bitcoin to be a thing in the future.
All right, well, we are looking at the major indexes that have turned fractionally lower, Seth, despite opening at record highs for the Dow and the S&P 500. Now seem to be hugging the flat line. We got to leave it there. Seth Denson, Happy New Year to you. He's a co-founder and chief strategist at GDP Advisors.